Marcus Henderson never expected that a morning jog along Willow Creek would change his life forever. The sound of children crying echoed through the misty dawn air, leading him to two small boys huddled together on the riverbank. But when their mother finally appeared, the words she spoke would shake him to his very core, calling him by a name that belonged to his late wife, a name no stranger should have ever known. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m., just as it had every morning for the past 3 years. Marcus rolled over in his empty king-sized bed, the space beside him still painfully vacant despite the time that had passed. Sarah's pillow remained exactly where she'd left it, though he'd long since stopped expecting to find her there when he woke. He pulled on his running gear in the dim light filtering through the bedroom curtains. The routine had become sacred to him. Wake up, run 5 miles along the creek, shower, wake up Emma, make breakfast, get her ready for school. Structure was everything now. Structure kept the pieces of their broken life from falling apart completely. Emma was still sleeping when he checked on her. At 7 years old, she looked so much like Sarah that sometimes it took his breath away. The same honey-colored hair, the same delicate features, the same way of sleeping with one arm thrown over her head. He pulled her door closed quietly and headed downstairs. The morning air was crisp for late September, with that hint of autumn that promised the changing of seasons. Marcus stretched on his front porch, looking out at the quiet suburban street where he and Sarah had bought their dream home 8 years ago. Back then, they'd planned to fill it with children, their laughter echoing through the rooms. Now it felt too big, too quiet, despite Emma's presence. He started his run at an easy pace, his feet finding their familiar rhythm on the sidewalk. The neighborhood was still asleep, porch lights glowing like lonely sentinels in the pre-dawn darkness. As he reached the edge of town, the sidewalk gave way to the dirt trail that wound along Willow Creek. This was his favorite part of the run, the place where he could let his mind wander, where the sound of flowing water drowned out the noise. In his head, the creek had been Sarah's favorite spot too. They'd brought Emma here as a toddler, teaching her to skip stones and look for minnows in the shallow water. Sarah had always said there was something magical about this place, something peaceful that made all their worries seem smaller. Marcus had started running this route after the funeral, desperate to feel close to her somehow. As he rounded a bend in the trail, an unusual sound broke through his rhythmic breathing and the gentle babble of the creek. It was faint at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind through the trees. But as he slowed his pace, the sound became clearer. Children crying. Marcus stopped completely, his heart rate spiking for reasons that had nothing to do with exercise. The crying was coming from somewhere ahead, near the old wooden bridge that crossed the narrowest part of the creek. He'd run this trail hundreds of times and had never encountered anyone else this early, especially not children. He approached cautiously, his parental instincts warring with his natural caution. As he got closer to the bridge, he could make out 2 small figures huddled together on the rocky bank below. They were boys, probably around 4 or 5 years old, identical in every way from what he could see, twins. They were soaking wet, their clothes clinging to their small frames, and they were crying with the desperate, exhausted sobs of children who had been at it for a long time. Marcus scrambled down the embankment, his running shoes slipping on the loose rocks. "Hey there," he called out softly, not wanting to startle them further. "Are you boys okay?" The twins looked up at him, with identical faces streaked with tears and mud. They had dark hair plastered to their heads and the biggest brown eyes Marcus had ever seen. One of them, or maybe both, he couldn't tell them apart, had a small cut on his forehead that had bled but seemed to have stopped. "We can't find our mama," one of them said between hiccuping sobs. His voice was small and scared, with just a hint of an accent Marcus couldn't quite place. "She was right here," the other boy added, pointing vaguely toward the water. "She told us to wait, but then she was gone." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He pulled out his phone to call 911, but there was no signal this deep in the creek bed. The nearest cell tower was miles away, blocked by the hills that surrounded this part of the valley. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their level. He shrugged off his lightweight running jacket and wrapped it around both boys, and though it barely covered them. "I'm Jake," said the boy with the cut on his forehead. "I'm Luke," said the other, sniffling. "Are you going to help us find our mama?" "Of course I am," Marcus said, though he had no idea how. The boys were clearly hypothermic, their lips tinged blue despite the mild morning temperature. They needed to get warm and dry, and he needed to get them somewhere with cell phone coverage, so he could call for help. "How long have you been here?" he asked. The boys looked at each other, the wordless communication that twins seemed to share. "Since the dark time," Jake said finally. "Since it got dark," Marcus clarified. "You've been here all night?" Both boys nodded. Luke started crying again, fresh tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his cheeks. "Mama said she'd be right back. She said to wait right here and not move, no matter what." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. No, Mother would leave two small children alone by a creek all night, not voluntarily. Either something had happened to her, or... He didn't want to think about the other possibilities. "Okay, listen to me," he said, making his voice as calm and reassuring as possible. "I'm going to help you find your mama, but first we need to get you boys warm and dry. Can you walk?" Both boys nodded and struggled to their feet. They were unsteady, probably from exhaustion and cold, but they seemed physically okay apart from Jake's minor cut. Marcus helped them up the embankment, going slowly and supporting them when they stumbled. When they reached the trail, he looked back toward town, calculating distances. His house was about 2 miles away, but there was a ranger station much closer, maybe half a mile back the way he'd come. It was probably closed this early, but he might be able to get cell coverage there. "We're going to walk to a place where I can call for help," he told the boys. "Can you do that? Can you be brave for me?" "We're very brave," Luke said solemnly. "Mama says we're the bravest boys in the whole world." The walk to the ranger station felt endless. Marcus carried Jake, when the little boy's legs gave out, while Luke trudged beside them with determined steps. Both boys had stopped crying, but they were quiet in a way that worried Marcus more than their tears had. The ranger station was indeed closed, but there was cell coverage in the parking lot. Marcus set Jake down gently and pulled out his phone, dialing 911 with fingers that were steadier than he felt. 911, what's your emergency?" "I found 2 lost children by Willow Creek," Marcus said. "Twin boys. Probably 4 or 5 years old. They've been out here all night. They're cold and wet, and their mother is missing." The dispatcher took down all the information: their location, the children's names, their condition. She told him to stay put and that units were on their way. Marcus gave the boys his phone number to memorize just in case, though they were too young to really understand why. While they waited, Marcus tried to keep the boys talking. He learned that they loved dinosaurs and pizza, that they had a dog named Buddy back home, and that their mama worked at something they called the place with all the books. A library, he assumed. "Where is home?" he asked gently. The boys looked confused. "With Mama," Jake said, as if that should be obvious. "But where do you and Mama live? What's your address?" More confusion. They were too young to know their address, which wasn't unusual. Most kids their age barely knew their full names, let alone where they lived. The first police car arrived within 15 minutes, followed quickly by an ambulance and a fire truck. Marcus watched as the paramedics examined the boys, checking their core temperature and treating Jake's cut. Both children were surprisingly calm, answering the officer's questions as best they could. Officer Patricia Valdez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle manner, took charge of the scene. She spoke to the boys in Spanish first, then English, trying to determine their background. They responded to both languages, which suggested they were bilingual, but they couldn't provide much more information than they'd already given Marcus. "We're going to take them to the hospital to get checked out," Officer Valdez told Marcus. "Then we'll start working on finding their mother. Can you come with us to give a statement?" Marcus nodded, though his mind was already racing ahead to Emma. She'd be waking up soon, expecting breakfast and her normal routine. He'd have to call his neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, to help with the morning schedule. At the hospital, Marcus sat in the waiting room while the doctors examined Jake and Luke. Officer Valdez interviewed him about exactly how and where he'd found them, taking detailed notes. She seemed competent and caring, which gave him some comfort. "Cases like this," she said, shaking her head, "could be anything. Mother might have had an accident, might be lost herself, could be something more complicated. We've put out an Amber Alert and notified all the surrounding counties. They mentioned their mother works at a library," Marcus offered. "That helps. We'll check all the libraries in a 50-mile radius, see if anyone recognizes them." Dr. Amanda. Chen emerged from the examination room with a clipboard and a reassuring smile. "Both boys are going to be fine," she announced. "Mild hypothermia, some dehydration, and Jake needed 3 stitches for that cut on his forehead. But overall, they're remarkably resilient. Children often are. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." "Any idea how long they were out there?" Officer Valdez asked. "Based on their condition, I'd say at least 8 to 10 hours, probably longer. They're lucky it wasn't colder last night." Marcus felt a wave of anger at whoever had left these children alone for so long. No matter what the circumstances, no matter what emergency had arisen, you didn't abandon 2 small boys by a creek in the middle of the night. "We're going to keep them here for observation for a few hours," Dr. Chen continued. "Then they'll need to go into temporary custody until we can locate their mother or other family." "Can I see them?" Marcus asked. "I just want to make sure they're okay." Dr. Chen led him to a pediatric room where both boys were tucked into a single hospital bed, sharing it like they'd probably shared everything their whole lives. They were clean now, wearing hospital gowns that were too big for them, and they looked impossibly small and vulnerable. "Marcus!" Jake called out when he saw him. "Are you going to help us find Mama now?" "The police officers are working very hard to find her," Marcus said, pulling up a chair beside their bed. "You boys are safe now. That's the most important thing. Mama's going to be so worried about us," Luke said solemnly. "She doesn't like it when we're not where we're supposed to be." "She told us to wait right there by the water," Jake added. "But we got so cold, and it was dark for so long." Marcus felt his heart break a little more. These children had such faith in their mother, such certainty that she was coming back for them. He hoped they were right, but his adult mind was already imagining darker possibilities. A nurse brought the boys lunch, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, and Marcus watched them eat with the methodical determination of children who had been truly hungry. They shared everything automatically, breaking their sandwiches in half and alternating spoonfuls of soup. "Are you gonna stay with us?" Luke asked between bites. "I have to go pick up my little girl from school," Marcus explained. "But I'll come. Back if I can, okay?" "What's your little girl's name?" Jake wanted to know. "Emma. She's 7 years old." "That's older than us," Luke observed. "We're 4 3/4. Marcus smiled despite everything. "That's pretty grown up." Officer Valdez returned as the boys were finishing their lunch. "We've had some promising leads," she told Marcus quietly. A woman, matching their mother's description, was seen at the Cedar Falls Library yesterday afternoon with 2 young boys. We're heading there now to talk to the staff. Cedar Falls was about 30 miles away, a small mountain town that Marcus had visited a few times with Sarah and Emma. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, which would make it easier to track down information. "I should go," Marcus said, checking his watch. Emma's school day ended in 2 hours, and he still needed to call Mrs. Peterson and figure out his afternoon schedule. "Jake, Luke," he said, approaching their bed, "I have to leave now, but these nice people are going to take very good care of you until your mama comes back." Both boys looked stricken. "But you're our friend," Jake protested. "Friends don't leave." "Sometimes friends have to take care of other things," Marcus explained gently. "But that doesn't mean we stop being friends." He was halfway to the door when Luke called out, "Marcus, will you tell Emma about us?" "If you want me to." "Tell her we said hi," Jake added. "And tell her we hope she likes having a daddy who saves people." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He managed to smile and wave goodbye, then walked quickly to the elevator before the boys could see how their innocent words had affected him. The drive home was a blur of phone calls and mental reorganization. Mrs. Peterson was happy to pick up Emma from school and stay with her until Marcus got home. His boss was understanding about the morning's emergency. Everything fell into place with the efficiency of a life lived carefully, with backup plans for every contingency. But as he pulled into his driveway, Marcus couldn't shake the image of those two small boys, so alone and scared, trusting him to help them find their mother. He'd been in their position once, though he'd been much older. 12 years old when his own mother had disappeared for 3 days, leaving him to take care of his younger sister. She'd come back eventually, full of apologies and promises she couldn't keep, but those 3 days had changed something fundamental in him. Maybe that's why he couldn't just walk away from Jake and Luke. Maybe that's why, as he stood in his empty house waiting for Emma to come home, he was already planning to drive back to the hospital that evening. He had no way of knowing that by the time he returned, everything would change in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Emma bounced into the house at 3:45 p.m., her backpack sliding off her shoulder as she kicked off her shoes in the entryway. Mrs. Peterson followed behind her, shaking her head with fond exasperation. "This one's got more energy than a golden retriever," the elderly woman said, accepting a cup of coffee from Marcus. "How did everything go this morning? You looked pretty shaken when you called." Marcus glanced at Emma, who was already digging through the refrigerator for her after-school snack. "I found 2 little boys who were lost. They're safe now, but their mother is still missing." "Oh my," Mrs. Peterson said, her hand going to her chest. "How awful, those poor babies." "Daddy, can I meet them?" Emma asked, emerging from the fridge with a string cheese and an apple. "I'm good with little kids. Mrs. Patterson says I'm a natural big sister." Marcus felt that familiar pang whenever Emma talked about siblings. She'd been asking for a baby brother or sister since she was 5, not understanding why it was just the 2 of them now. Sarah had wanted more children too, but the cancer had taken that possibility away along with everything else. "Maybe," he said carefully, "we'll see how things go." After Mrs. Peterson left, Marcus helped Emma with her homework at the kitchen table. She was working on a story about her weekend, illustrating it with careful drawings of their trip to the Science Museum. But Marcus found his attention drifting, his mind still back at the hospital with Jake and Luke. "Daddy, you're not listening," Emma said, tugging on his sleeve. "I asked if we can have pizza for dinner." "Sorry, sweetheart. Pizza sounds great. Are you thinking about those boys you found?" Marcus looked at his daughter, struck by her perceptiveness. At 7, she was already showing signs of Sarah's emotional intelligence, her ability to read people and situations with uncanny accuracy. "Yeah, I am. They're about your age when you were 4, and they're scared because they can't find their mom." Emma nodded solemnly. "When I was little and couldn't find Mommy in the store, I got really scared too, but she always found me." "That's right, she always did." "Do you think their mommy will find them?" Marcus hoped so, but he wasn't sure how to answer. The police are working very hard to bring them back together. After dinner, Marcus wrestled with his conscience. Part of him wanted to return to the hospital to check on the boys, but another part wondered if he was getting too involved. He wasn't their father. He wasn't responsible for them. He'd done his good deed by finding them and getting them help, but as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Daddy, are you going to see Jake and Luke tonight?" "How did you know that's what I was thinking?" "Because that's what Mommy would have done." She never could leave people alone when they needed help. Sarah had indeed been like that, always volunteering at the school, always bringing casseroles to sick neighbors, always making sure everyone around her was taken care of. It was one of the things Marcus had loved most about her, and one of the things he missed most. "If I go, Mrs. Peterson will come sit with you. Would that be okay?" Emma nodded. "Tell them I said hi. And tell them—" She paused, thinking. "Tell them they're going to be okay." Mrs. Peterson arrived at 7:30, bringing her knitting and a thermos of tea. "Go on," she said, settling into the living room chair. "That little girl of yours will be fine. This is important." The hospital was quieter in the evening, the harsh fluorescent lights somehow softer. Marcus found his way to the pediatric ward, where the night nurse directed him to the boys' room. Through the window, he could see them sitting, up in bed, drawing with crayons on paper placemats. "Marcus!" Jake called out when he entered. "You came back!" "I told you I would if I could," Marcus said, pulling up the same chair from earlier. "What are you drawing?" "Our house," Luke said, holding up a picture that was mostly green scribbles, with a brown rectangle in the middle. "It has a big yard and a swing set. And this is Buddy," Jake added, showing Marcus a drawing of what might have been a dog, though it looked more like a furry blob with legs. "He's going to be so happy when we get home." "The police officers came back," Luke said. "They asked us lots of questions." "Did they find any information about your mama?" Both boys shook their heads. "They said they're still looking," Jake replied, "but they found the library where she works." Marcus felt a spark of hope. "That's good news. What did they say about the library?" "They said nobody there knew us," Luke said matter-of-factly. "But maybe they forgot," Marcus frowned. "If their mother worked at the library in Cedar Falls, surely someone would remember her bringing twin boys to work or mentioning them in conversation. The fact that no one recognized them was troubling." "Boys, can you tell me anything else about your mama? What does she look like?" "She's pretty," Jake said immediately. "She has long hair like chocolate, and she smells like flowers," Luke added. "And she sings to us when we're scared." "Does she have a car?" "A blue one," Jake said. "But sometimes it doesn't work and we have to walk places. Do you remember driving to the creek yesterday?" The boys looked at each other with that twin communication again. "We don't remember driving," Luke said slowly. "We remember walking with Mama through the trees." "Walking? That's a long way to walk with little boys." "Mama said we were going on an adventure," Jake explained. "She said we were going to see something special by the water." Marcus felt a chill. The more he learned about their story, the less sense it made. No mother would walk miles through rough terrain with 4-year-old twins just to show them a creek. And no mother would then disappear, leaving them alone all night. "Did your mama seem worried about anything yesterday?" he asked gently. "She was crying," Luke said quietly. "She cried a lot lately. But she said everything was going to be okay," Jake added quickly. "She said we just had to be brave for a little while." A nurse entered the room to check on the boys, and Marcus stepped into the hallway with her. "Has anyone else come to see them?" he asked. "Just you and the police," she said. "It's unusual. Most lost children have someone, grandparents, family, friends, someone who notices they're missing." "What happens if they don't find the mother?" "They'll go into foster care, temporarily while Child Services works on finding relatives." It's not ideal, but these boys seem resilient. Marcus returned to the room to find Jake and Luke curled up together in the bed, their drawings scattered around them. They looked so small and vulnerable, so much like Emma had looked when she was younger. Are you leaving again? Luke asked sleepily. In a little while, I have to get home to Emma. Will you come back tomorrow? Marcus hesitated. He was already more involved than he should be, but looking at their hopeful faces, he couldn't bring himself to say no. If I can. Marcus? Jake's voice was very small. What if Mama can't find us here? The police will make sure she knows where you are when they find her. But what if she doesn't come back? The question hung in the air, too big and too frightening for a 4-year-old to be asking. Marcus sat down on the edge of their bed, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that make things complicated, he said. But there are always people who will take care of you, no matter what happens. Like you? Like lots of people, like the nurses here and the police officers and families who love children, but we want our mama. I know you do, and that's exactly how it should be. Marcus stayed until both boys fell asleep, then drove home through the quiet streets of his neighborhood. Emma was already asleep when he checked on her, and Mrs. Peterson was dozing in her chair with her knitting in her lap. How are they? She asked when he gently woke her. Scared, confused, but they're fighters. Just like someone else I know, she said, patting his arm. You're a good man, Marcus Henderson. Sarah would be proud of you. The next morning followed the same routine. Wake up, run, breakfast, Emma to school. But instead of taking his usual route along the creek, Marcus found himself driving back to the hospital during his lunch break. Officer Valdez was in the boys' room when he arrived, along with a woman in a business suit who introduced herself as Janet Morrison from Child Services. We've expanded our search, Officer Valdez explained. We're checking with hospitals, mental health facilities, even the county jail. Someone had to have seen these boys before yesterday. What's concerning, Ms. Morrison added, is that there's no record of them anywhere. No school enrollment, no medical records, no birth certificates that we can find. It's like they don't exist on paper. That's impossible, Marcus said. They have to be registered somewhere. You'd think so, but we've run their names through every database we have access to. Jake and Luke. What last name did they give you? Marcus realized he'd never asked. Boys, what's your last name? What's your mama's full name? The twins looked confused. Mama's name is Mama, Jake said. But people have two names, Marcus explained. Like my name is Marcus Henderson. Marcus is my first name and Henderson is my last name. We're just Jake and Luke, Luke said with certainty. Officer Valdez and Ms. Morrison exchanged glances. Children this age usually know their last names, Ms. Morrison said quietly, and they usually know their mother's first name. Could they be in some kind of protection program, Marcus asked. Witness protection or something? We've checked with the appropriate agencies. Nothing. What about missing children reports from other states? We've gone back 6 months. Nothing matches their description. Marcus felt increasingly uneasy. Every new piece of information made the situation more mysterious rather than clearer. Who were these boys? Where had they come from? And why was there no trace of their existence? We're going to have to place them in temporary care, Ms. Morrison said. We have a good foster family in Cedar Falls who specialize in young children. No, Jake said suddenly, having apparently been listening. We want to stay with Marcus. Yeah, Luke agreed. Marcus is our friend. Boys, I'm not... Marcus started to explain, but Jake interrupted. You found us when we were lost. You took care of us. That makes you our person. Your person. Mama says everyone has a person who takes care of them when things get scary. You're our person now. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. These boys were looking at him with complete trust, complete faith that he would somehow make everything okay. Mr. Henderson, Miss Morrison said, I know you've been very kind to these children, but you're not a licensed foster parent. There are procedures. What would it take? Marcus asked, surprising himself. To become licensed, I mean, temporarily. It's not a simple process. Background checks, home visits, training sessions. It takes months under normal circumstances. But these aren't normal circumstances. Officer Valdez spoke up. There is something called emergency placement. If you're serious about this, we could expedite the process, but it would mean a huge commitment on your part. Marcus looked at Jake and Luke, who were watching him with expressions of desperate hope. He thought about Emma, about how she'd always wanted siblings. He thought about Sarah, about what she would have done in this situation. I'm serious, he said. The paperwork took the rest of the afternoon. Background checks, references, financial statements. Marcus called his boss to explain the situation and arrange for more time off. He called Emma's school to let them know about the potential change in their family situation. Most importantly, he called Emma herself. Daddy, are Jake and Luke going to come live with us? She asked when he explained the situation. Maybe, for a little while. How do you feel about that? I think it would be good. They need someone to take care of them, and I've always wanted little brothers. They might not be your brothers forever, Em. Their mama might come back, or they might go live with other family members, I know. But they can be my brothers while they're here. The simplicity of her acceptance amazed him. At 7 years old, Emma understood something that had taken him much longer to grasp. That love didn't always have to be permanent to be real. By evening, the emergency placement had been approved. Marcus found himself walking through the hospital corridors with a bag of clothes that Mrs. Peterson had hastily purchased, heading toward a future he couldn't have imagined that morning. Are we really going to live with you? Luke asked when Marcus told them the news. For now, until we figure out what happened to your mama. And Emma's really going to be our sister? She's very excited to meet you. Jake and Luke looked at each other, then back at Marcus. Will you teach us to run like you? Jake asked. When you're bigger, will you read us stories? Every night. Will you love us even if we're scared sometimes? Marcus felt his throat tighten, especially when you're scared. As he helped the boys gather their few belongings, the drawings they'd made, the hospital gowns they'd gotten attached to, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway. A woman was standing near the nurses' station, talking quietly to one of the staff members. She had long dark hair and was wearing a jacket that had seen better days. Something about her seemed familiar, though he couldn't place what. She was too far away to hear the conversation, but her body language suggested urgency, desperation even. When she turned slightly, Marcus could see her profile, young, maybe late 20s, with delicate features and dark circles under her eyes. Boys, stay here for a minute, he said, stepping toward the doorway. But when he looked again, the woman was gone. What is it? Jake asked. I thought I saw someone. Marcus looked up and down the hallway, but it was empty except for the usual hospital staff. Never mind. Are you ready to go home? Home with you? Luke asked, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Home with me. As they walked toward the elevator, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. But when he turned to look back, the hallway was empty. Still, something nagged at him, a sense of unfinished business that he couldn't quite identify. He had no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours, his carefully constructed new life would be turned upside down by 3 words that would change everything. Hello, David. The ride home was a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. Jake and Luke sat in the back seat of Marcus's SUV, their small faces pressed against the windows as they took in the suburban landscape. Marcus had installed 2 car seats that afternoon, a crash course in child safety that had taken him 3 YouTube videos and 45 minutes to figure out. Is that where we're going to live? Luke asked as they pulled into the driveway of the two-story colonial house. For now, Marcus said, though he was already wondering how temporary this arrangement would really be. The boys had no records, no identifiable family, and their mother remained a complete mystery. Emma was waiting on the front porch with Mrs. Peterson, practically bouncing with anticipation. She'd spent the afternoon helping prepare the guest room, arranging her old stuffed animals on the twin beds and setting out some of her favorite picture books. "Jake! Luke!" she called out as they climbed out of the car. "I'm Emma. I've been waiting for you." The twins hung back shyly. Suddenly, overwhelmed by the reality of their new situation, Marcus crouched down beside them. "Remember what I told you about Emma? She's really excited to have you here, but she won't rush you. You can take your time getting to know each other." Emma seemed to understand intuitively, approaching slowly with her hands behind her back. "I brought you something," she said, revealing two small toy cars. "They're my favorites, but I want you to have them." The gesture broke through the boys' reserve. Jake reached out tentatively to take one of the cars, examining it with the serious attention that children give to precious gifts. "It's really fast," Emma said. "Watch." She knelt down and demonstrated how to roll the car across the porch. "You can race them if you want." Within minutes, both boys were on their hands and knees, racing cars across the wooden planks, while Emma cheered them on. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with stress. This was what his house had been missing. The sound of children's laughter, the chaos of family life. Mrs. Peterson helped with dinner, teaching the boys how to set the table and involving them in simple tasks that made them feel useful. They ate spaghetti and meatballs, with more sauce ending up on their faces than in their mouths, while Emma regaled them with stories about her school and her friends. "Do we get to go to school too?" Luke asked. "Eventually," Marcus said, "but first we need to figure out some things." "Like what?" Jake wanted to know. "Like where you came from and what happened to your mama." The boys' faces fell slightly. "She's gonna come back," Luke said with quiet confidence. "She always comes back." "I'm sure she will," Marcus said, though privately he had growing doubts. It had been 3 days now since the boys were found, and despite extensive searches, there was no trace of their mother. After dinner, Marcus ran baths for the twins, while Emma helped by gathering towels and pajamas. The boys were fascinated by the bathtub, splashing and giggling as if they hadn't seen running water in a long time. "Don't they have bathtubs where they come from?" Emma whispered to Marcus. "I don't know, sweetheart. We're still learning about their life before." Bedtime was an adventure. The boys were used to sleeping together, so Marcus pushed the twin beds in the guest room close together. Emma insisted on reading them a story, choosing Where the Wild Things Are and performing. All the voices with theatrical flair. "Will you check for monsters?" Jake asked as Marcus tucked them in. "There are no monsters here," Marcus assured him, though he checked under the beds and in the closet anyway, remembering Emma's own monster-checking phase. "What if we have bad dreams?" Luke asked. "Then you call for me, and I'll come right away." "What if we miss our mama too much?" Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "It's okay to miss her. Missing someone you love is normal. But you're safe here, and you're not alone." The boys seemed satisfied with this answer, curling up together in the space. Between the beds, Marcus left their door cracked open and the hallway light on, then went to check on Emma. "Daddy," she said as he sat on her bed, "are you sad about Mommy more now that Jake and Luke are here?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you think that?" "Because they're looking for their mama. And it makes me think about how we can't look for ours because she's in heaven." Marcus felt his heart break a little. At 7, Emma was already grappling with concepts that challenged adults. "I think about Mommy every day," he said. "Having Jake and Luke here doesn't make me sadder about her. If anything, it makes me think about how proud she'd be of you for being so kind to them. She would have liked them, right?" "She would have loved them," just like she loved you." Emma smiled and snuggled deeper into her blankets. "I'm glad they're here, Daddy. The house feels more like a family now." Marcus kissed her forehead and turned off her light, then made his way downstairs. The house was quiet except for the usual settling sounds, but it felt different somehow, more alive, more complete. He was settling into his recliner with a cup of coffee when he heard a soft knock at the front door. Marcus glanced at the clock. It was nearly 10 p.m., too late for casual visitors. He looked through the peephole but saw only darkness. When he opened the door, a woman was standing on his porch, partially hidden in the shadows beyond the porch light. She was young, maybe late 20s, with long dark hair and clothes that looked like she'd been living rough. Her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and what might have been tears. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm looking for my boys. 2 little boys. Someone told me they might be here." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Are you Jake and Luke's mother?" The woman nodded, relief flooding her features. "Yes, my name is Carmen Rivera. I've been looking everywhere for them." "They're here," Marcus said, stepping back to let her in. "They're safe. They're sleeping upstairs." Carmen stepped into the foyer, her eyes darting around as if she expected someone to jump out at her. She was thin, Marcus noticed, thinner than healthy, and there was something haunted in her expression. "I can't thank you enough," she said. "When I heard that someone had found them by the creek, I was so scared. I've been searching for 3 days." "Where have you been?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. "The boys said you told them to wait by the water and that you'd be right back." Carmen's face crumpled. "I know how it looks. I know you must think I'm a terrible mother, but I would never abandon my babies. Something happened, something I can't explain." "What do you mean?" "I was getting water from the creek. The boys were playing on the bank, and I told them to stay right there. But then—" She paused, her hands shaking. "Then I was somewhere else, somewhere I'd never been before, and I couldn't remember how I got there or how to get back." Marcus frowned. "You don't remember? Did you hit your head? Have a seizure?" "I don't know. I woke up in a parking lot 20 miles away with no memory of how I got there. I've been walking and hitchhiking, trying to find my way back to where I left them." The story sounded bizarre, but Marcus had seen enough strange things in his life to know that impossible things sometimes happened. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, I just need to see my boys. They're sleeping, but I'm sure they'd want to see you. They've been asking for you constantly." Carmen's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared. I thought I'd lost them forever." Marcus led her toward the stairs, but she stopped suddenly, her hand gripping the banister. She was staring at the family photos that lined the stairway wall. Pictures of Marcus, Emma, and Sarah from happier times. "Is that your wife?" she asked, pointing to a photo of Sarah laughing at the beach. "My late wife, yes. She passed away 3 years ago." Carmen moved closer to the photo, her face pale in the dim light. "What was her name?" "Sarah." "Why?" Carmen was quiet for a long moment, studying the photograph with an intensity that made Marcus uncomfortable. "She's beautiful," she said finally. "She looks familiar somehow. You might have seen her around town. She was very involved in community activities." "No, it's not that." Carmen turned to face him, and in the soft light from the hallway, Marcus could see tears streaming down her cheeks. I think I knew her, but not as Sarah." "What do you mean?" Carmen took a shaky breath. "The woman in this photo, I knew her as Diana Castellanos. She was my sister." Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. "That's impossible. My wife's name was Sarah Henderson. She didn't have any siblings. She had me." Carmen's voice was barely a whisper. "She had me, and she had another life before she became Sarah." before she met you." "You're mistaken," Marcus said, but even as he spoke, he was studying Carmen's face more closely. There was something familiar about her features, something that reminded him of... "I know this is hard to believe," Carmen continued, "but Diana, Sarah, she was in witness protection. She had to disappear, had to become someone else. But she never forgot about me. She never forgot about the family she left behind." Marcus sank onto the stairs, his mind reeling. Witness protection? That's insane. Sarah worked at a marketing firm. She was from Ohio. She had normal parents, a normal life. Did you ever meet her parents? The question hit like a physical blow. Marcus had never met Sarah's parents. She'd always said they were dead, killed in a car accident when she was in college. There had been no other family at their wedding, no relatives to visit during holidays. "She told me they were dead," he said weakly. "They weren't dead. They were in hiding, just like she was, just like I was supposed to be. This is crazy. You're talking about my wife like she was some kind of criminal." "Not a criminal, a witness. She saw something she shouldn't have seen, and she had to disappear to stay alive. But she kept in touch with me through coded letters. She sent me photos of you and Emma. She told me about her new life, her new family." Carmen reached into her jacket and pulled out a worn envelope. "She sent me this 6 months before she died. She said if anything ever happened to her, if she ever couldn't protect me anymore, I should find you." Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. His name was written on the front in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a letter, along with a photo of himself and Emma that had been taken in their backyard. "My dearest David," the letter began, and Marcus's blood ran cold. No one had called him David since he was a child. He'd always gone by Marcus, his middle name, even on official documents. The only person who had ever known his first name was... "She called you David, didn't she?" Carmen said quietly. "That was the name she used when she talked about you." Marcus read the letter with growing shock. Sarah had written about her past, about the life she'd left behind to keep her family safe. She'd written about Carmen, about the danger they'd both faced, about the sacrifice she'd made to protect everyone she loved. "I don't understand," Marcus said. "If she was in witness protection, why didn't she tell me?" "Because telling you would have put you in danger too. The people she was hiding from, they don't forget, they don't forgive. But you're here now. You're using your real name." Carmen's face darkened. "Because they found me anyway. 3 days ago, the same day Jake and Luke went missing. They came to my house in Cedar Falls. I barely escaped with the boys. You're saying someone was chasing you. I'm saying someone was trying to kill me, and when I couldn't get away fast enough, I hid the boys by the creek and led the men away from them. I thought I was protecting them, but then I got lost, and I couldn't find my way back." Marcus stared at her, trying to process what she was telling him. "Jake and Luke are your sons? Sarah's nephews? My boys. I've been raising them since they were babies, trying to give them a normal life. But normal was never really an option for our family. Why should I believe any of this?" Carmen reached into her other pocket and pulled out another photo. It showed 3 young women standing together, their arms around each other's shoulders. One of them was unmistakably Sarah, though she looked younger, her hair darker. Another was clearly Carmen. The third was a woman Marcus didn't recognize. "This was taken 8 years ago, right before Sarah went into the program," Carmen said. "That's our sister Maria. She was killed 2 years later when they found her hiding in Phoenix." Marcus studied the photo, his hands shaking. There was no denying it was Sarah, but she looked different somehow. Happier, maybe, more carefree, like the woman he'd fallen in love with, but without the shadows he'd sometimes seen in her eyes. "The boys don't know," Carmen continued. "They think I'm their mother because that's what I've been to them. But their real mother was Maria. She died protecting them, just like Sarah died protecting you. Sarah died of cancer. Sarah died of and cancer that went undiagnosed for too long because she was afraid to go to doctors. She was afraid they'd find her, that they'd trace her medical records back to Diana Castellanos. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Sarah's reluctance to see doctors, her insistence on paying for everything in cash, her nervousness around strangers. Marcus had attributed it to quirks, to personal preferences. He'd never imagined it was fear. Who are they? He asked. Who was she so afraid of? People who think blood debts don't expire. People who believe in justice that has nothing to do with the law. Before Marcus could respond, they heard footsteps on the stairs above them. Jake appeared at the top of the landing, rubbing his eyes. "Mama!" he called out sleepily. "Mama! Is that you?" Carmen looked up at her son, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, baby, Mama's here. I knew you'd come back," Jake said, running down the stairs into her arms. "I told Luke you'd come back." As Carmen held her son, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Over her shoulder, he could see a car parked across the street, its headlights off, but its engine running. It hadn't been there when Carmen arrived. "Carmen," he said quietly, "did anyone follow you here?" She looked up, following his gaze to the window. When she saw the car, her face went white with terror. "We have to go," she whispered. "Right now." "They found me." "Who found you?" But Carmen was already moving, scooping Jake into her arms. "Luke," she called upstairs. "Luke, we have to go." "No," Marcus said, stepping in front of her. "You're not taking those boys anywhere until you tell me. What's really going on?" "David, please." Carmen's use of his forgotten name stopped him cold. "Sarah made me promise. If anything ever happened, if they ever found us, I was supposed to bring the boys to you. She said you'd protect them." "Protect them from what?" "From the people who killed Sarah's father, the people who killed Maria, the people who are coming for us right now." Through the window, Marcus could see the car doors opening. Two men stepped out, their movements careful and deliberate. Even from a distance, he could see they were armed. "Hello, David," Carmen whispered, and Marcus realized that these were the words that would change everything. Not because of what they meant, but because of what they represented. The moment when his carefully constructed life collided with the dangerous truth of who his wife had really been. Luke appeared at the top of the stairs, Luke in his arms, and Emma was right behind him, awakened by the commotion. "Daddy," Emma said, her voice small and scared. "What's happening?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at the two little boys who trusted him to keep them safe, and at the woman who claimed to be his dead wife's sister. Outside, footsteps were approaching his front door. "Everyone upstairs," he said quietly. "Right now." Because whatever Sarah had been running from, whatever she died trying to escape, it had finally found them all. Marcus herded everyone upstairs, his mind racing through options he'd never imagined needing. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, confusion written across her face. Luke was crying softly in Carmen's arms, while Jake pressed close to his mother's side, sensing the danger even if he didn't understand it. "Bathroom," Marcus whispered, pointing toward the end of the hall. "Lock the door." Carmen moved quickly with the boys, while Marcus grabbed Emma's hand. "Em, I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, though her lower lip was trembling. "Are the bad men coming for Jake and Luke? I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Any of you." The sound of splintering wood echoed from downstairs. They'd kicked in the front door. Heavy footsteps moved through the house with military precision. These weren't random criminals. They were professionals. Marcus pulled out his phone to call 911, but Carmen grabbed his wrist. "They'll be gone before the police arrive," she whispered, "and the police can't protect us from this." "Then what do you suggest?" "The back of the house." "Is there another way out?" Marcus nodded toward his bedroom. "Fire escape ladder in my closet, but we'd have to get past them to reach it." "David," Carmen said urgently, "Sarah left something for you, something she said would keep us safe if this day ever came." "What are you talking about?" "Check her jewelry box, the bottom drawer. She said you'd find what you needed there. The footsteps were on the stairs now. Marcus made a split-second decision, pushing Emma toward Carmen. Take her! Get everyone in the bathroom and don't come out until I tell you. Daddy, no, Emma whispered, but Carmen was already pulling her away. Marcus slipped into his bedroom, his heart hammering as he moved toward Sarah's jewelry box. He'd never gone through her things properly after she died, unable to face the finality of it. The bottom drawer stuck, swollen with humidity, but when he finally yanked it open, his breath caught. Hidden beneath old photographs was a manila envelope marked, "For David, emergency only," in Sarah's handwriting. Inside was a USB drive, a set of keys he didn't recognize, and an address written on a slip of paper. But it was the other item that made his blood run cold, a Glock 19 pistol with a full magazine. Sarah had always claimed to hate guns. She'd refused to let him keep one in the house, even after the break-ins that had plagued their neighborhood. Now he understood why she'd been so adamant. She'd been hiding her own. The footsteps had reached the upstairs hallway. Marcus checked the weapon quickly. It was loaded and well-maintained. Sarah's secrets ran deeper than he'd ever imagined. A voice called out from the hallway, accented English, with a hint of something Eastern European. "Mrs. Rivera, we know you're here. Bring the children out, and no one needs to be hurt." Marcus positioned himself behind his bedroom door, gun raised. Through the crack, he could see a man in dark clothing moving carefully down the hall, checking each room. The man was tall, built like a soldier, with the kind of calm confidence that came from extensive training. "We have no quarrel with the man of this house," the voice continued. "This is family business, old debts that must be settled." The bathroom door was locked, but these men would break it down easily if they found it. Marcus needed to draw them away, give Carmen and the children time to escape. He stepped into the hallway, gun raised. "You need to leave now." The man turned smoothly, his own weapon already in his hands. "Mr. Henderson, you should not involve yourself in matters that don't concern you. Children in my house concern me. Those children carry blood that must answer for crimes against my family. Their aunt killed my brother. Their mother killed my cousin. The debt passes to them. They're 4 years old. Age does not erase blood guilt." Marcus could see a second man at the top of the stairs, blocking that escape route. These weren't street thugs. They moved with the coordination of a military unit. What did their aunt do that justifies hunting children? "She testified against our organization. 3 of my family died because of her words. The law called it justice. We call it murder." "So you've been hunting them for 8 years? We are patient people. Justice does not expire." The man's eyes flicked toward the bathroom door. "Mrs. Rivera, you have 30 seconds to open that door, or we will open it ourselves." Marcus made his decision. He fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. "The police are on their way. You have about 10 minutes to disappear." The man smiled coldly. "No police are coming. Your phone signals are being blocked." Marcus cursed silently. These people were more sophisticated than he'd thought, but the gunshot would have alerted the neighbors, especially Mrs. Peterson, who slept with her window open. "Victor!" the second man called from the stairs. "Cars coming up the street." Victor's expression hardened. "Open the door, Mrs. Rivera. We're leaving, with or without you." The bathroom door cracked open, and Carmen appeared, her face pale but determined. "Let me talk to them," she whispered to Marcus. "Carmen, don't," but she was already stepping into the hallway, hands raised. "I'm here, but the children stay." "All debts must be paid," Victor said. "The boys carry the bloodline. Then take me instead. 1 life for 2. You think your death settles this? Your sister thought the same thing. Look how that ended." Carmen's face crumpled. "Sarah's dead. Maria's dead. How much blood do you need?" As much as it takes. Marcus saw the man's finger tighten on his trigger, and everything slowed down. He lunged forward, tackling Carmen and pulling her behind the wall as Victor's shot splintered the doorframe where her head had been. The house erupted into chaos. Emma screamed from the bathroom while Jake and Luke began crying. Marcus returned fire, forcing Victor to take cover behind the banister. The second man was charging up the stairs, and Marcus realized they were about to be overwhelmed. That's when the sound of sirens cut through the night air. Not just one or two, a whole convoy. Victor's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "Backup plan," he called to his partner. "Now!" Both men began moving toward the stairs, but the sirens were getting closer. Victor turned back to Marcus with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over. We know where you live now. We know about your daughter. If you come near my family, your family became our business the moment you sheltered those children. Consider yourself marked." The men disappeared down the stairs, just as red and blue lights began flashing through the windows. Marcus heard the back door slam, then the sound of a motorcycle engine roaring to life in the alley behind his house. Police officers flooded into the house, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Marcus dropped his gun and raised his hands while Carmen did the same. Emma burst out of the bathroom and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and sobbing. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements, reports, and questions. Detective Angela Morrison, no relation to the child services worker, took charge of the scene. She was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much violence. "So let me get this straight," she said, reviewing her notes. "You found these children 3 days ago, took them into emergency foster care, and now armed men are hunting them because of some family vendetta dating back 8 years. "That's the short version," Marcus said. "And your late wife was allegedly in witness protection under an assumed identity, but you never knew about it." "I never suspected anything." Detective Morrison looked at Carmen. "You have proof of any of this?" Carmen nodded toward the USB drive that crime scene technicians had bagged as evidence. "Everything's on there. Sarah documented everything. The original crime she witnessed, the threats against our family, the people we lost. She was building a case, gathering evidence for when the statute of limitations ran out on her protection agreement." "What kind of crime triggers this level of retaliation?" "Human trafficking," Carmen said quietly. "Sarah witnessed a shipment of young girls being brought through the port in Long Beach. She tried to help them and called the police. Her testimony put 3 men in prison for 20 years. And the others came after your family. The organization doesn't forget. They can't let it look like testifying against them is safe." Detective Morrison closed her notebook. "Well, they've graduated from intimidation to attempted murder. We'll put out alerts for the suspects, but if these people are as professional as they seem, they're probably already out of state." "What about protection for my family?" Marcus asked. "I'll contact the FBI. If your wife was really in witness protection, they'll want to know about this breach. And until then, you watch your backs." After the police left, Marcus found himself sitting in his living room with Carmen and the 3 children, all of them exhausted, but too wired to sleep. The front door had been repaired with a temporary board, and a patrol car was stationed outside, but Marcus knew it wouldn't be enough. "We can't stay here," Carmen said, echoing his thoughts. "They know where you live now." "Where do we go?" Carmen pulled out the address Sarah had left in the envelope. Sarah mentioned a safe house, somewhere she set up as a last resort. Marcus looked at the address. A rural location about 2 hours north, near a small town called Pine Ridge. "You think it's still secure?" Sarah was thorough. If she said it was safe, it probably is. Emma was curled up against Marcus's side, finally asleep despite everything. Jake and Luke had fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket together. Looking at them, Marcus felt a fierce protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. "Those men," he said quietly. "They're really planning to kill children? In their culture, blood debt passes through generations. They believe the sins of the aunt fall on the nephews. That's barbaric. It's their way, and they have enough money and connections to make it happen, no matter how long it takes." Marcus looked at the sleeping children. Emma, who'd already lost her mother and didn't deserve to lose her sense of safety. Jake and Luke, who'd been through more trauma in their short lives than most adults ever experienced. "Sarah's safe house," he said. "How do we know it's not compromised?" "We don't, but it's better than sitting here waiting for them to come back. If we run, we'll always be running." Carmen met his eyes. "Maybe, but running means the children get to grow up. Staying means they don't." Marcus made his decision. "Pack light, we leave in an hour." As Carmen went to gather their few belongings, Marcus found himself looking at Sarah's photograph on the mantelpiece. Diana Castellanos. He'd thought he knew everything about the woman he'd married, but it turned out he'd barely scratched the surface. "I wish you'd trusted me," he whispered to the photo. "I wish you'd let me help." But even as he said it, he understood why she hadn't. Sarah had sacrificed her identity, her family, her entire past to keep the people she loved safe. She'd died protecting secrets that could have destroyed them all. Now those secrets were out, and the danger she'd spent years avoiding had finally caught up with them. Marcus had a choice to make. He could try to return to his normal life and hope the threat would pass, or he could accept that his old life was over and commit fully to protecting these children who had somehow become his responsibility. Looking at Emma's peaceful face, at Jake and Luke sleeping so trustingly on his couch, the choice wasn't really a choice at all. An hour later, they loaded into his SUV under cover of darkness, leaving behind the only home Emma had ever known. The patrol car followed them to the edge of town, then turned back, leaving them on their own. As they drove through the night toward an uncertain future, Marcus realized that finding those two boys by the creek had changed more than just his daily routine. It had revealed the truth about his past and thrust him into a world he'd never known existed. Sarah had called him David in her final letter, the name from his childhood that only she had known. Now he understood why. David was the name of someone who fought giants, someone who protected the innocent against impossible odds. Marcus Henderson had been a single father trying to rebuild his life after loss. But David was something else entirely, a protector, a guardian, someone willing to stand between children and the darkness that hunted them. The transformation was complete, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. The drive to Pine Ridge took them through winding mountain roads that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. Marcus kept checking his rearview mirror, but the highway behind them remained empty except for the occasional trucker. Emma slept fitfully in her car seat, while Jake and Luke had curled up together in the back row, exhausted by the night's trauma. Carmen sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the passing landscape with haunted eyes. She hadn't spoken much since they'd left town, lost in thoughts that Marcus could only imagine. "Tell me about Sarah," he said quietly, needing to break the oppressive silence. "About Diana. What was she like before?" Carmen's lips curved in a sad smile. "Fierce, stubborn. She always believed she could fix things that were broken. That's what got her into trouble in the first place. At the port, she was working as a translator for social services, helping process asylum seekers. She wasn't supposed to be there that night, but she'd heard rumors about a shipment coming in. Young girls, some barely teenagers being trafficked from Eastern Europe." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "She went to investigate on her own." That was Diana. She couldn't sit back and wait for someone else to do the right thing. She found them, locked in a shipping container, half dead from dehydration and abuse. She called 911, but by the time police arrived, most of the traffickers had scattered. Most of them. 3 men got caught. Victor's brother was one of them. His cousin was another. They were mid-level operators, but they knew enough to bring down a significant portion of the network. And Diana testified against them. She didn't want to. The FBI tried to convince her that her translator's statement would be enough, but the defense attorneys tore apart the other evidence. Diana's testimony was the only thing that could put them away. Marcus could picture Sarah, Diana, making that choice. She'd had the same moral compass as a mother, the same inability to walk away from someone who needed help. What happened to the girls? Some were reunited with families. Others disappeared back into the system. Diana tried to keep track of them, tried to help, but once the trial ended, she had to vanish into witness protection, into a life where she could never again be the person who fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. It almost broke her. Marcus thought about the woman he'd married, her occasional melancholy, her fierce protectiveness of Emma, her insistence on volunteering despite having no connections to the community. She'd been trying to reclaim pieces of who she'd been. She never told you about Maria? Carmen asked. She never mentioned any family at all. Maria was the youngest, just 19 when Diana went into protection. She was supposed to come with her, but she refused to leave me behind. You were close? Maria raised me after our parents died. She was more like a mother than a sister. When Diana disappeared, Maria became everything to me. And when Maria was killed, Carmen's voice broke. That's when I understood that being part of this family was a death sentence. But you kept the boys. Jake and Luke were all I had left of her. Maria died protecting them, getting them away from the men who came for her. I couldn't let her sacrifice be meaningless. They passed a sign indicating Pine Ridge was 15 miles ahead. Marcus began watching for the rural route number Sarah had written down, though in the darkness it was hard to make out the smaller. Road signs? There, Carmen said, pointing to a narrow turnoff barely visible between tall pines. Rural Route 47. Marcus turned onto a gravel road that wound deeper into the forest. The headlights revealed dense woods on both sides, with no signs of human habitation. After 3 miles, they came to a gate secured with a chain and padlock. The keys, Carmen reminded him. Marcus retrieved the unfamiliar keys Sarah had left, trying several before finding one that fit. The gate swung open with a rusty squeak, and they continued up a steep driveway that seemed to go on forever. The safe house appeared suddenly in their headlights, a small log cabin nestled in a clearing, surrounded by towering evergreens. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and Marcus could see a generator shed and what looked like a water tank. Sarah had prepared for complete self-sufficiency. How long has this place been here? Marcus asked as they parked. Diana bought it 6 years ago when Jake and Luke were babies. She said if anything ever happened, if our covers were blown, this would be our fallback position. The cabin was locked, but another key on Sarah's ring opened the front door. Inside, emergency lanterns automatically activated, casting a warm glow over a surprisingly well-appointed interior. The main room contained a stone fireplace, comfortable. Furniture and shelves lined with books. A small kitchen occupied one corner, and Marcus could see 2 bedrooms through doorways at the back. Solar power and a backup generator, Carmen observed, checking a control panel near the door. Water. From a private well. Diana thought of everything. Emma stirred as Marcus carried her inside, blinking in the soft light. Daddy? Where are we? Somewhere safe, sweetheart. We're going to stay here for a while. Jake and Luke woke up as he brought them in, looking around with wide eyes. Is this our new house? Luke asked. For now, Marcus said, though he had no idea how long for now might be. Carmen was exploring the cabin systematically, checking windows and exits with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent years looking over her shoulder. Motion sensors around the perimeter, she reported. Camera system with night vision. Sarah really was thorough. In the kitchen, Marcus found the refrigerator stocked with non-perishable foods and the freezer full of frozen meals. A note taped To the door read, "Power has been on since 2019. System checks weekly. Tom." "Who's Tom?" Marcus asked. Diana hired a local man to maintain the place. She paid him well to ask no questions and keep quiet. Emma tugged on Marcus's shirt. "Daddy, I'm scared. Can we go home?" Marcus knelt down to her level, his heart breaking at the confusion in her eyes. "Em, remember how we talked about how sometimes grown-ups have problems that make things complicated?" She nodded. "Well, some people are angry about things that happened a long time ago before you were even born. They want to hurt Jake and Luke because of those old problems. But that's not fair. Jake and Luke didn't do anything wrong." "You're absolutely right. It's not fair at all. But until we can figure out how to fix this, we need to stay somewhere they can't find us. Like camping." "Exactly like camping. An adventure." Emma seemed to accept this explanation, though Marcus could see she was still worried. Jake and Luke were examining the cabin with the resilience of children who'd learned to adapt quickly to new situations. Carmen had found another envelope taped under one of the kitchen drawers, this one containing cash, additional identification documents, and what appeared to be contact information for federal marshals. "Backup identities," she said, showing Marcus driver's licenses with their photos but different names. "Sarah set up complete lives for all of us." Marcus stared at the license bearing his photo, but identifying him as Robert Hayes. The attention to detail was staggering. Even the photo looked like it had been taken for an official document. When did she do all this? She started planning right after Emma was born. Having a child made her realize how much she had to lose. That night, they settled into the cabin's routines. Marcus built a fire, while Carmen prepared a simple dinner from the stocked supplies. The children, exhausted by the day's events, ate quietly and went to bed early in the cabin's smaller bedroom, all three of them piling into a single queen-sized bed. "They're good kids," Carmen said as she and Marcus sat by the fire. "Emma's taken to Jake and Luke like they've always been siblings. She's wanted brothers or sisters for years. I just never thought it would happen like this. Diana would have loved seeing them together." Marcus stared into the flames, processing the surreal turn his life had taken. A week ago, his biggest worry had been whether Emma was eating enough vegetables. Now, he was hiding in a secret cabin with a false identity, trying to protect 3 children from professional killers. "Carmen, what's the end game here? Do we just hide forever?" Diana was working on something before she died. She'd been gathering evidence, building a case against the entire organization. She believed if she could expose their full network, put enough of them in prison, the threat would end. "Where's this evidence?" "I don't know. She was secretive about it, said it was safer if only she knew the details." Marcus thought about the USB drive the police had seized. "Do you think it was on the drive she left me?" "Maybe. Or maybe that was just insurance, copies of what she'd already gathered. We need to find out what's on it. Even if we could access it, what then? We're not law enforcement. We can't just walk into the FBI and say, 'Here's evidence about a criminal organization. Please arrest them.' Why not?" Carmen gave him a look that suggested he was being naive, because some of these people have connections in law enforcement. Diana didn't trust anyone in the system toward the end. She'd found evidence of corruption, people on the payroll. So, what did she plan to do? I think she was going to make it public, release everything to journalists, post it online where it couldn't be suppressed. Force the authorities to act. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Then that's what we'll do. "David, these people killed a federal witness who was under protection. They've eliminated everyone else who posed a threat to them. What makes you think we can succeed where Diana failed?" "Because Diana was trying to protect her family by staying hidden. We're already exposed. We've got nothing left to lose." Carmen studied his face in the firelight. "You really mean that?" "Those men threatened Emma. they threatened Jake and Luke. "I won't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when they'll come for us. It's dangerous. If we go public, if we try to expose them, we'll paint targets on our backs." "We already have targets on our backs." Carmen was quiet for a long moment. "Diana chose the name David for you in her letters. She said it was because you reminded her of the biblical David, someone who wasn't afraid to face giants. Right now, I feel more like someone who's in way over his head. That's what courage is. Being scared, but doing what's right anyway." Marcus thought about Sarah, about the secret life she'd lived and the sacrifices she'd made. She'd given up everything to protect the people she loved, but in the end, the threat had found them anyway. "Tomorrow, we will start figuring out what's on that USB drive," he said, "and we start planning how to end this. And if we can't, if the evidence isn't enough, or if we can't find a way to make it public safely." Marcus looked toward the bedroom where 3 children slept peacefully, trusting him to keep them safe. "Then we find another way. But I won't let those kids grow up afraid." Outside, the mountain wind whispered through the pines, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called to its mate. The cabin felt secure, isolated, but Marcus knew it was only a temporary sanctuary. Eventually, they'd have to leave this place and face the world again. When they did, he intended to be ready. Not as Marcus Henderson, the grieving widower who'd stumbled into this situation by accident, but as David, the protector Sarah had always believed him to be. The transformation that had begun by a creek 3 days ago was nearly complete. All that remained was to discover what Sarah had died trying to accomplish and find a way to finish it. As the fire burned down to embers, Marcus made a silent promise to the woman he'd thought he'd known. Whatever secrets she'd carried, whatever evidence she'd gathered, he would see her mission through to the end, even if it meant confronting giants. Marcus woke to the sound of children's laughter echoing from outside the cabin. For a moment, he forgot where he was, the normalcy of the sound at odds with their circumstances. Through the bedroom window, he could see Emma, Jake, and Luke playing in a small clearing behind the cabin, their voices carrying the carefree joy that only children could maintain despite everything. Carmen was already up, standing in the kitchen with a laptop computer Marcus hadn't seen before. "I found Sarah's backup system," she said without looking up. "Hidden panel behind the bookshelf. She has everything here: computers, satellite internet, communication equipment. Any luck with the evidence?" "That's the problem. Everything's encrypted, and I don't have the passwords. But there's something else." Carmen turned the laptop toward him, showing a news article dated 2 days ago. Victor Petrov was found dead in a motel outside Sacramento. Single gunshot to the head. Marcus felt a chill. His own people killed him. Failure isn't tolerated in their organization. He was supposed to eliminate us quietly, but instead he created a crime scene that brought police attention. Does that mean we're safe? Carmen's expression was grim. It means they're sending someone more competent to finish the job. Marcus called the children inside for breakfast, noting how naturally they'd adapted to their new environment. Emma was teaching Jake and Luke to identify different types of pine cones, while the twins shared stories about camping trips they'd taken with their mama. The resilience of childhood never ceased to amaze him. After breakfast, Marcus and Carmen worked on the encryption problem while the children played board games they'd found in the cabin's closet. The security system showed no movement around the perimeter, but Marcus found himself checking the monitors every few minutes. "Try birth dates," Carmen suggested as Marcus attempted another password combination. Diana always used significant dates. Marcus tried Emma's birthday, then his own, then various combinations of dates from their marriage. Nothing worked. Then he had a thought. What if Sarah had used dates from her original life, not her assumed identity? "When was Maria born?" he asked. Carmen told him, and Marcus typed in the date. The computer chimed and files began appearing on the screen. "We're in." What they found was staggering. Sarah had compiled a database that went far beyond the human trafficking case that had started everything. She documented money laundering operations, drug distribution networks, and political corruption spanning multiple states. The organization Victor represented was just one tentacle of a vast criminal enterprise. "My God," Carmen breathed, scrolling. Through financial records, she traced money flows through dozens of shell companies. Look at these names: city councilmen, state legislators, even federal judges. Marcus studied a document showing wire transfers between various accounts. How did she get all this? Diana was always brilliant with computers. Before the trafficking case, she worked in financial investigation for the state. She knew how to follow money trails. This is enough to bring down dozens of people. Why didn't she release it? Carmen pointed to a folder labeled Insurance Policies. Inside were photographs of Sarah herself, obviously taken with a telephoto lens, showing her at Emma's school, at the grocery store, in their backyard. The message was clear. They knew where she was, and they could reach her any time. She was gathering evidence, but every time she got close to going public, they reminded her what she had to lose. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. Sarah had spent years living in fear, accumulating proof of these criminals' activities, but unable to act because of the threat to her family. She died carrying the weight of justice denied. "There's more," Carmen said, opening another folder. This one contained recent communications, encrypted messages between Sarah and someone, identified only as Phoenix. Marcus read over Carmen's shoulder. The messages detailed plans to coordinate a massive document release with multiple news organizations simultaneously, making it impossible for the criminal network to suppress the information. Phoenix was her contact, Carmen realized. Someone on the inside feeding her current intelligence. Is Phoenix still active? Carmen checked the message timestamps. Last communication was 3 days before Sarah died. Nothing since. We need to reach out to them. David, Phoenix could be anyone, could be a federal agent, could be a journalist, could be someone else in hiding. If we contact them incorrectly, we could expose them too. Marcus studied the message. Thread more carefully. Phoenix had used specific phrasing, particular references that seemed almost coded. Then he noticed something. A reference to the mountain sanctuary in one of the messages. Phoenix knows about this place, he said. Look at this message. Mountain sanctuary preparations complete. They're talking about this cabin. Carmen's eyes widened. You think Phoenix helped Diana set this up? I think Phoenix has been planning for this contingency. Sarah's death wasn't the end of the plan. It was just a setback. They spent the next hour crafting a careful message, using the same encrypted communication system Sarah had employed. Marcus wrote, Diana's family is safe at the mountain sanctuary, ready to proceed with Phoenix protocol. David. The response came within minutes. Confirm identity with Diana's designation for the eldest child. Marcus and Carmen looked at each other. Sarah's designation for Emma, Carmen said slowly. What would that be? Marcus thought about the pet name Sarah had used for Emma, the special terms of endearment between mother and daughter. Then he remembered something from Sarah's journal, which he'd found among her things. She'd often referred to Emma as her little guardian angel. He typed, Guardian Angel. The response was immediate. Identity confirmed. Package delivery tonight. Maintain security protocols. Package delivery? Carmen asked. Before Marcus could speculate, the cabin's perimeter alarm chimed softly. The security monitors showed a figure approaching through the woods, a woman in hiking gear, moving with purposeful confidence toward the cabin. Marcus reached for the gun Sarah had left him, but Carmen caught his arm. Wait! Look at how she's moving. She knows the alarm system, knows to approach from the southeast to avoid the motion sensors. The woman reached the clearing and held up her hands, showing she was unarmed. She was in her 40s, with graying, brown hair and the weathered look of someone who spent time outdoors. When she spoke, her voice carried authority. "David Carmen, it's safe to come out. I'm Agent Patricia Chen, FBI. I'm Phoenix." Marcus and Carmen exchanged glances. "Could be a trap," Carmen whispered. "Could be, but if it is, we're trapped anyway." Marcus opened the door, keeping the gun ready but not raised. "Agent Chen, you'll forgive me if I ask for some proof of identity." The woman smiled and reached slowly into her jacket, producing an FBI badge and identification. "I've been working with Diana for 3 years, building this case from the inside. I was supposed to meet with her the week she died." "Why should we trust you?" "Because I'm the one who's been paying Tom to maintain this cabin. Because I know. Diana left you a Glock 19 with a custom grip she had made in Phoenix, the city I chose for my code name, and because I know she called you David in her private writings, even though your legal name is Marcus. The details were too specific to be coincidental." Marcus lowered the gun and stepped aside to let her enter. Agent Chen nodded approvingly at the cabin's interior. "Diana did good work here. Solar power, secure communications, enough supplies for months. She was planning for every contingency. Except dying of cancer," Carmen said bitterly. "Actually, she was planning for that too." Agent Chen set a briefcase on the table and opened it, revealing additional hard drives and documents. "Diana knew her time was limited. These are copies of everything," she gathered, along with my own investigation files. She wanted to make sure her work would continue, even if she couldn't. Emma appeared in the doorway to the children's room, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy? Who's the lady?" "A friend of Mommy's," Marcus said carefully. "Agent Chen, these are the children. We're protecting." Agent Chen's expression softened as she looked at Emma, Jake, and Luke. "Hello there. I knew your mother, Emma. She talked about you all the time." "You knew Mommy?" "I did. She was very brave, and she'd be very proud of you for taking care of Jake and Luke." Agent Chen turned back to Marcus and Carmen, her expression becoming serious again. "We need to move quickly. My sources indicate that the organization has sent a cleanup team to eliminate all loose ends. They'll find this place eventually." "What's the plan?" Marcus asked. "We go public with everything all at once. I've arranged for simultaneous releases to 5 major newspapers, 3 television networks, and 2 online investigative journalism platforms. The information goes live tomorrow night during prime time, and then we hope the resulting investigations and arrests happen fast enough to neutralize the threats against you." Carmen looked skeptical. "What if they don't? What if enough of them escape to continue hunting us? Then we disappear. I have contacts in the Marshal Service who can arrange new identities, relocation, complete severance from your old lives." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "We'd lose everything. Our home, our friends, Emma's school. David, these people killed. Diana, they killed Maria. They'll keep killing until everyone who poses a threat is dead. The only way this ends is if we destroy them first." The weight of the decision pressed down on Marcus. He looked at the 3 children, who were now playing quietly in the corner, blissfully unaware that their entire future hung in the balance. "What about them?" he asked, nodding toward Jake and Luke. "If we expose everything, if their connection to this case becomes public knowledge, they'll need new identities regardless," Agent Chen said. "Carmen, too. You're all part of this now. And Emma? Emma can keep her identity if you choose relocation. As far as anyone knows, she's just the daughter of a man who got caught up in someone else's fight." But Marcus knew it wasn't that simple. Emma had already bonded with Jake and Luke. Separating them would traumatize all 3 children, and keeping them together meant accepting that their lives would never be normal. "How long do we have to decide?" Carmen asked. "The information release is set for tomorrow night. After that, there's no going back." Agent Chen spent the rest of the day reviewing the evidence with them, explaining how the simultaneous release would work and what to expect in the aftermath. The scope of the corruption was breathtaking. The criminal organization had infiltrated law enforcement, the courts, and local government at multiple levels. Diana uncovered something they thought was impossible, Agent Chen explained. A complete map of their operations. Names, dates, financial records, communication intercepts. This will trigger the largest organized crime investigation in decades. That evening, as Agent Chen prepared to leave, Marcus found himself sitting by the fire with the 3 children. Emma was reading to Jake and Luke from one of her favorite books, their heads leaning together as they studied the pictures. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly, "are we going to have to move away?" "Maybe, sweetheart. Would that be okay with you?" Emma considered this seriously. "Will Jake and Luke come with us?" "Yes, they'll come with us." "Then it's okay. Home isn't a place. Anyway, Mommy told me that home is where your family is." Marcus felt his eyes water. At 7 years old, Emma understood something that had taken him much longer to grasp. Family wasn't about blood or legal documents or shared history. It was about choosing to love and protect each other, no matter what. "You're right," he said, pulling all 3 children close. "You're absolutely right." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Marcus and Carmen sat on the cabin's front porch, looking up at stars visible through the clear mountain air. "Diana would be proud of you," Carmen said quietly, taking in Jake and Luke, standing up to those men, choosing to fight instead of hide. "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted. "I have no idea what we're walking into." Diana was terrified too, but she did it anyway, because it was right. "Do you think it will work? The information release?" Carmen was quiet for a long moment. "I think Diana believed it would. That has to be enough." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle into certainty. Tomorrow night, they would release Sarah's evidence and change their lives forever. There would be no going back to the quiet suburban existence he'd built after her death, but looking through the window at the 3 sleeping children who had somehow become his responsibility, Marcus realized he didn't want to go back. The man who had found 2 crying boys by a creek no longer existed. In his place was someone stronger, someone willing to fight giants to protect the innocent. David was ready to face whatever came next. The final confrontation with the past was about to begin. The morning of the evidence release dawned crisp and clear, with frost glittering on the pine needles outside the cabin windows. Marcus woke to find all 3 children crowded into his bed, having migrated there sometime during the night. Emma was curled against his left side, while Jake and Luke had claimed his right arm as a pillow. For a moment, he allowed himself to appreciate the simple peace of the scene. By tonight, their lives would be irrevocably changed. This might be the last quiet morning they'd have for a very long time. Agent Chen arrived early, bringing coffee and fresh pastries from a bakery in Pine Ridge. She'd spent the night in town, coordinating final preparations with news organizations across the country. "Everything's set," she reported as Marcus and Carmen joined her at the kitchen table. "The information goes live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Coordinated release across all platforms simultaneously." "Any word on the cleanup team?" Carmen asked. "They're close. My sources indicate 3 operatives crossed into California yesterday. Professional, well-funded, and very motivated to tie up loose ends before tonight." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "How close?" "Close enough that we need to be ready to move at any moment." The day passed with agonizing slowness. The children, sensing the adults' tension, were unusually subdued. Emma helped Jake and Luke pack their few belongings into a single bag, while Marcus and Carmen prepared emergency supplies and reviewed escape routes Agent Chen had mapped out. At 3 p.m., the cabin's perimeter alarms began chiming in sequence. The security monitors showed vehicles approaching from multiple directions. Black SUVs moving with military precision along the forest roads. "That's them," Agent Chen said, checking her weapon. 3 vehicles, probably 9 operatives total. "Can we outrun them?" Marcus asked. "Not with the children. We make our stand here." Agent Chen had anticipated this scenario. The cabin's construction included reinforced walls and bulletproof windows, designed to withstand exactly this type of assault. But Marcus knew they were vastly outnumbered. "Kids, come here," he called, gathering Emma, Jake, and Luke. "Remember, the game we talked about, the hiding game." Earlier that day, Agent Chen had shown them a hidden safe room behind the cabin's back wall, a small space with its own ventilation system and communication equipment. The children had thought it was exciting, like something from a spy movie. "We go hide now?" Luke asked, his eyes wide, but not quite scared yet. "That's right. And you stay quiet until I come get you, no matter what sounds you hear, okay?" Emma nodded seriously, taking both boys by the hand. "I'll take care of them, Daddy." "I know you will, sweetheart." Marcus helped them into the safe room, his heart breaking at the trust in their eyes. They believed he would protect them, that he would make everything okay. He only hoped he could live up to that faith. The first gunshots came at 3:47 p.m., distant cracks echoing through the forest, as the operatives tested the cabin's defenses. Agent Chen positioned herself at the front window, while Marcus and Carmen took the side windows, creating overlapping fields of fire. "They're probing," Agent Chen observed, watching figures move between the trees. "Professional approach. They'll try to force us into a tactical mistake." Marcus had never been in combat, had never imagined himself in a firefight. But holding Sarah's gun, thinking about the children hiding just feet away, he felt a calm determination settle over him. The real assault began 20 minutes later. Smoke grenades created cover as the operatives moved closer, their automatic weapons laying down suppressing fire that shattered windows and splintered wood. Marcus returned fire when he could, though he knew they were fighting a delaying action. "At best, David," Agent Chen called over the gunfire. "West window." Marcus turned to see an operative approaching with what looked like an explosive device. Without thinking, he took careful aim and fired, the man dropping before he could attach the charge to the cabin wall. "Good shot," Carmen said, impressed despite their circumstances. The gunfight continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Then suddenly the forest fell silent. The operatives had stopped firing, stopped moving. "What's happening?" Carmen whispered. Agent Chen was listening to something through an earpiece Marcus hadn't noticed before. Her face lit up with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "It's 5 p.m. Pacific," she said. "The story just broke. Every news network in the country is running simultaneous reports about the largest organized crime investigation in decades. My backup teams are moving in." Through the forest, Marcus could hear new sounds. Helicopters approaching, vehicles with sirens. The cavalry was arriving, but whether it was in time remained to be seen. The remaining operatives made one last desperate assault, charging the cabin directly. Marcus found himself firing repeatedly, no longer thinking about what he was doing, focused only on protecting the children behind the wall. Then it was over. FBI agents in tactical gear emerged from the forest, calling for the cabin's occupants to identify themselves. Agent Chen stepped onto the porch with her hands raised, shouting credentials and clearance codes. Marcus opened the safe room, and 3 worried faces peered out at him. "Is it over, Daddy?" Emma asked. "I think so, sweetheart. I think it's over." The aftermath was a blur of debriefings, medical examinations, and media requests. Agent Chen had been right about the scope of the story. Sarah's evidence triggered arrests in 12 states, with more than 40 people taken into custody in the first 24 hours. The safe house in Pine Ridge became a temporary command center with FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and federal prosecutors rotating through to interview Marcus and Carmen. The children were examined by trauma specialists, who pronounced them remarkably resilient despite everything they'd experienced. "It's unusual," Dr. Rebecca Martinez explained to Marcus. "Most children would show significant stress responses after what they've been through, but these three seem to have formed such strong bonds with each other that they're processing the trauma as a shared experience rather than individual victimization. So they're okay. They're better than okay. They're functioning as a family unit, supporting each other emotionally. It's actually quite beautiful to observe." A week after the shootout, Agent Chen delivered the news they'd been waiting for. "The main organization is finished," she announced. "We've seized their financial assets, arrested their leadership, and identified their remaining operatives. The threat to your family is officially over." "What happens now?" Carmen asked. "That's up to you. The Marshal Service can still arrange new identities if you want them, or you can return to your normal lives with some ongoing protection until the trials are complete." Marcus looked at Carmen, then at the three children who were building a fort out of couch cushions in the corner. Emma was directing the construction, while Jake and Luke provided engineering consultation. They worked together with the easy cooperation of siblings who'd known each other their whole lives. "What about custody?" Marcus asked. "Legal guardianship of Jake and Luke. Carmen has been their primary caretaker for years, but there are no official records. Given the circumstances, and given that Emma has clearly bonded with them, the court would likely approve joint custody or adoption proceedings." Marcus felt his heart skip. Adoption? If that's what you all want. That evening, Marcus found himself sitting on the cabin's porch with Carmen, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Inside, they could hear the children playing one of Emma's board games, their laughter echoing through the quiet forest. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "About staying together, I mean. About making it official." Carmen was quiet for a long moment. "Jake and Luke love you," she said finally. "They've been through more trauma in their short lives than most adults ever experience, but they feel safe with you. And Emma, she's been a godsend for them." "That's not what I'm asking." Carmen smiled. "I know what you're asking, and yes, I think we should try, not because of the circumstances that brought us together, but because somewhere along the way we became a family. It won't be easy. Single father, suddenly dealing with twins, figuring out how to blend our lives together." "David," Carmen said, using the name that no longer sounded strange coming from her, "nothing about this situation has been easy. But easy isn't what makes a family work. What does? Love, commitment, the willingness to keep showing up for each other, even when things get complicated." 3 months later, Marcus stood in a courthouse in Sacramento, holding adoption papers that officially made Jake and Luke Henderson his sons. Carmen had decided to keep her last name, but she'd moved to their town, taking a job at the local library and renting a house 3 blocks away from Marcus and the children. They weren't married. That conversation was still evolving, still finding its way through the complex emotions of grief, gratitude, and growing affection. But they were family in all the ways that mattered. Emma had started 3rd grade at her old school, proudly introducing Jake and Luke as her little brothers to anyone who would listen. The twins were enrolled in pre-K, where they quickly became popular for their synchronized mischief and their habit of sharing everything equally. The media attention had eventually died down, though Marcus still occasionally received interview requests about the Creek children case, as reporters had dubbed it. He'd done a few interviews, carefully focusing on the importance of protecting vulnerable children rather than the more dramatic aspects of their story. Sarah's grave had a new headstone now, one that included her real name alongside the identity she'd assumed. Diana Sarah Castellanos Henderson, it read. Beloved wife, mother and sister, she protected those who couldn't protect themselves. Marcus visited the grave monthly, usually bringing the children with him. Emma would tell Sarah about school and her brother's latest adventures, while Jake and Luke would leave drawings and flowers they'd picked. Carmen always stayed back, giving Marcus space to talk to his wife about their new life. I think you'd approve, he said during one visit, watching the children play among the headstones while Carmen waited patiently by the car. It's not what either of us planned, but it's good. It's right. The wind stirred the leaves on the oak tree above Sarah's grave, and Marcus chose to interpret it as agreement. That evening, as he tucked all three children into their beds, Jake and Luke had bunk beds in what used to be Emma's playroom. Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together. A year ago, he'd been a lonely widower going through the motions of life, trying to be a good father to Emma while struggling with his own grief. Now he was part of something larger, more complex, but infinitely more alive. Daddy, Emma said as he kissed her goodnight, do you think Mommy sent Jake and Luke to us? What do you mean? I mean you found them by the creek where you used to run to feel close to Mommy, and then their mama turned out to be Mommy's sister, even though we didn't know Mommy had a sister. It seems like maybe Mommy arranged it somehow. Marcus considered this. Sarah had always believed that everything happened for a reason, that the universe had a way of bringing people together when they needed each other most. Maybe she did, he said. What do you think? I think she did. I think she knew we needed to be a bigger family, and she figured out how to make it happen. Later, as Marcus cleaned up toys from the living room and prepared for another day of chaos and joy and the beautiful complications of family life, he found himself believing Emma might be right. He'd gone for a run by Willow Creek looking for solitude and found 3 children who would change his life forever. Carmen had come looking for her boys and found a man willing to fight giants to protect them. Agent Chen had spent 3 years building a case and found the key to bringing down a criminal empire. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just Sarah still taking care of the people she loved from whatever place she'd gone to. Marcus chose to believe it was all 3. Outside, the autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying the promise of winter and the certainty of spring to follow. Inside, 4 people who'd found each other through tragedy and terror were building something beautiful together. A family forged not by blood or law, but by choice and love and the simple decision to keep showing up for each other. It wasn't the life Marcus had planned, but it was the life he'd been given, and that he'd learned made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.